Dresden, city in Saxony, and the purpose of our protest here is that you're being is the Bilderberg-Konferenz over there. Right. So we would like to ask you a few questions. What's your name?
Well, my name is Peter Dash, and I'm from Canada, and I've been working all the way around the world, teaching in universities, corporate training, business English, and also I'm a writer. I have a book called Arabia, and so I write about conspiracies, spy thrillers, so it's very appropriate for me to be here today, because I like writing about conspiracies, and some of you guys I guess think this is a conspiracy, but beautiful day today, lovely city, and wonderful to be here, and to be able to have the honor of having you ask me some questions, and hopefully provide some interesting answers, and I hope later on I can ask you some questions as well. So mutual interviewing, consistent with your whole idea about mutual dialogue, which I appreciate what your group is
Thanks for
talking
that, by the way.
about. Yeah.
So thank you for being here, and you say it's not a conspiracy theory, and you also have different topics. So what is the purpose of you being here?
Well, I'm here mostly for tourism and also to get some information and research on my next book, which will be about how Russia tries to take over North America through financial chicanery and all that. But definitely I'm interested in what's going on with Bilderberg and certainly issues around it, and people like yourself who are concerned that maybe some of the issues and the way they're discussing them and talking about them isn't as open as it should be or in the interests of the wide population. So I take my hat off to you, even though I don't have one, I should have one today, it's so sunny, for your efforts to open discussion, get people thinking about a lot of the things that are going on in that conference behind us, but only 100 meters away, I guess, or 200 meters away, not very far away.
So thank you very much for this.
And I also should add I have a blog on geopolitical issues.
So what's the name of the blog?
It's Pete Dash, P-E-T-E, D-A-S-H, just like my name, Peter Dash, except without the R. So it's petedash.com. So you can get it. It's got 500 blogs on it, and I have accumulated 1.5 million visits. But not too much happening right now because I've been working on my book. But I think your listeners will find some of the blogs there quite interesting.
What is the name of your coming book? And is it a series?
It's called Golden Bear.
Okay.
Yeah, it's how the financial community works with rogue Russians, very devious oligarchs and Kremlin insiders. Not all of the Kremlin, it's not an official Russian government project.
So are you concerned, really are concerned about Russia taking over America?
No, I'm not. It's a book, and I suppose there'll be a sort of a satirical, comic aspect to it. But it does show you what can happen with the way offshore companies, shell companies, through governments, not just the Russian government if they want it, can take over control of the economy and sideline everybody's common interest except their own. So it does show a lot of how the financial system can be manipulated to basically isolate and sideline, general folks.
Yes.
I like to say like us, okay? Yeah.
What is your view in the world right now? Do you think we're all in danger, or what do you think is going wrong with this world?
I think we're at a stage, just like the stage of the, I don't know whether it's the Russian Revolution stage or the French Revolution stage, where we now have to go to a whole new model of thinking about the economy, and old thinking and elitist thinking is preventing us from going to that next stage. But I think it's inevitable. We just have too much technology, there's still too much wealth for so many people to be starving. Even in Germany, people are going hungry, or Canada, or not getting the counseling and help from government or foundations because there's so-called not enough resources around. And I don't think that should happen. I think we have enough to have prosperity and to ensure a lot more people are doing much better. I'm not an idealist. I always think there'll be marginalized people, and people will find different ways to impoverish themselves when they shouldn't be, given the resources they have. But overall, I think we need a new economy if we're going to have a new world order, it's not going to be the one that they're putting together behind us, if they even really know what they're doing to be able to put a new world order. I would argue they're not so smart, and they're not so cohesive, and they don't really understand a lot of their social forces working. That I told you before, Chris,
You did, yeah.
Yeah, about how they're siloed off. This generation of decision makers, they're in their own silo, separate, and they need to come down and talk to people. I think one Bilderberger did that, and they didn't invite him back next year. Boo-hoo, he didn't get invited back. I don't think this necessarily what's going on there is such great secret information, most of it. But I think the way they conduct themselves in secrecy, this is not a good way for us to have cohesion and unity in our society and find the answers we need to find in this very troubled time.
So you have a deep wish for social justice and unity?
Yes, I do. I'm not really, I'm more of a libertarian type of person. I'm not big on taxes, but I certainly am big on philanthropy, on taking care of the people who are needy through more imaginative ways, pressing the banks. One of my ideas in my blogs is to have a bankers fund for social development, where the fines of the banks and a lot more of their profits would go into a joint private sector and non-governmental organization to help the third world and cities with urban decay, problems of deindustrialized workers. If you see in the United States, Donald Trump is very popular with some of these workers because he's against free trade, he's against all this globalization that's maybe a lot of workers haven't benefited. Some have, but a lot haven't, and they don't recognize it. They're all surprised about the Trump phenomenon. Now, people may not like Donald Trump, but they shouldn't be surprised that a guy who's upset with the system is doing well in the United States, and people who are against the system are doing well in Europe. These people in the Bilderberg, a lot of them are disconnected. It's like, why is everybody upset? Why are they voting for all these right-wing, left-wing people than the Green? What's going on here? We're so nice to everybody, you know?
So I have two questions for you. So the first thing is, do you think the Bilderberger, people who go to the Bilderberg-Konferenz, do you think they care about the simple people?
I think some do. I mean, one of the Bilderbergers allowed my book to be put in her store, her bookstore, and she's there. And you know, this book I have called Arabia is a lot about social justice and fighting neo-Nazis and all this kind of thing, and Islamic extremists. It's not against Islam.
Do you think it's a problem, neo-Nazis and Islamic extremists? Or are they like bigger threats of peace and security?
I think they kind of, unfortunately, they kind of complement each other, and that's what my book Arabia shows. How the right-wing people can join up with these extremists and divide up the world into a Islamic extremist hellhole, you know, and then let Europe turn into some kind of extreme right-wing or neo-Nazi or something very unpleasant. Let's not be extreme and
to divide the world.
Yeah, and that would suit these two groups, of which bankers are representative of each group. Not all bankers, not most bankers. So, you know, that was my first book about this neo-Nazi Islamic extremist alliance called Arabia. It's Zurich, Arabia.
Zurich, Arabia.
Zurabia.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a condensation of the word Zurich, where all the Swiss banks are, and Arabia. Okay. You know, where there's a lot of obviously.
What do you think about the situation?
So that's a concern I have. I don't think it's a big concern, but I think if things really go the wrong way, we're going to have these kinds of extremism becoming much stronger, and we already see it stronger in the Middle East, and we see it stronger in Europe, and we see it stronger in North America, especially the United States.
Do you think the extremism rising in the Middle East is dependent on the wars?
I think it's partly blowback, as Ron Paul said. If you could keep on bombing people to pieces, if somebody came and bombed your house, what would you do? And you survived. If they took out all your brothers, what would you do? Whether it's a drone or a bomb or whatever. Obviously, what ISIS is doing, those extremists, is not going to make us be nice people too. We've got to fight against this kind of violence, and we've got to eliminate it. But to what degree is the West, in a very bad way that it has organized policy, foreign policy, responsible for creating these vacuums within which these extremists flourish? You know, I mean, obviously, George Bush going into Iraq, that was just... I don't even think that was absolutely, there was no reason. I mean, it was to get the oil. Our Prime Minister at the time, Jean Chrétien, who was courageous on that point, said to Bush, Bush Jr. I call him, I said, don't go in. You know, we know you don't go into Zimbabwe because there's no oil. You don't like Robert Mugabe, but you go into Iraq, though. So, you know, that kind of straight, vicious violence to grab money, it creates havoc for generations and generations. It creates environments in which terrorism can spread and grow wings, and it's very unfortunate. We need a more peaceful world. We can't be sort of unrealistic. People who are violent, we have to stop them. But we have to have a more holistic, balanced global policy that allows these places to develop, not to be destroyed, and from their destruction will be possibly our destruction, as we saw with 9/11. I mean, we're now just paranoid about everything.
Paranoid, yeah.
You know, we're so worried because I think the West has bombed so many people and done so much destruction. I don't say everything we've done is bad. We've created a lot of enemies. When I say we, I guess I mean generous. I should say they, the Bilderberg people.
Okay, what do you think about the Bilderberg-Konferenz? Which matter is it? Or like, how much influence do they really have?
I have questions about any meeting that's very publicly known and gets a lot of attention, whether in fact it's all that effective. Maybe it used to be quiet, set aside, where a bunch of top players, small numbers, really put together ideas like the European Union and so on. But now, I think it's more of a circus, you know, all this thing about, you know, them getting the media worldwide not to cover it so that they can be, you know, clandestine and have an open discussion, not being influenced by extreme media or sensational media. I think that's crap. I think they're increasingly irrelevant.
Yeah, what do you think, what ideas are behind the Bilderberg-Konferenz right now?
Well, they're obviously worried about the Trump phenomenon and the extreme right phenomenon and how it's disunifying the West and preventing them from more quickly promoting their agenda. I think they see it more as nasty obstacles, a little bit surprise, and they're irritated that these guys like Trump and Sanders and more, let's say, extreme groups in Europe are sidelining or slowing down their agenda. And they're very surprised, and now all of a sudden they're in a little bit of a panic, talking about all these issues that, when they talk about disunification, what they're talking about is people's preventing their agenda from going forward in the way they want, you know? If it's a more decentralized Europe, that's bad, and they want to stop that. Britain leaving, I mean, Switzerland is even part of the EU and it survives.
Yes,
I mean, these guys, they're so driven to their agenda, they're more driven to their common agenda than the old Soviet Union Communist Party plenaries.
So what do you think for Europe and North America? Which way will it go?
Pardon me?
Which way will it go in North America and Europe? How's the development you foresee?
I think we've seen proto-fascistic tendencies. What do I mean by proto-fascistic tendencies? We've seen extreme right-wing tendencies in the culture. Since 1980s, Psychology Today, which is a very popular magazine, was even talking about it in the 1980s. Now, 2016, we see, some of the things Trump is saying, though I'm not against everything Trump is, but some of the way he's saying it, these authoritarian kinds of things that are attracting a lot of people, it sounds a little bit like Hitler,
Okay, so you think we're going like a fascist way into the future?
Yeah, softer and slower. I don't think Trump is going to be any Hitler. I don't think so. You need to worry what happens after Hillary.
Hillary's more dangerous, I think.
Yeah, and you need to think even past her, because she's going to do the same stuff that's not going to work, and it's just going to aggravate things, more wars, more social division, and then you got to say, after her, what will the American people be open to? After the Weimar Republic, we know what happened. I mean, people of Dresden know what happens when you have these vacuums, because nothing is working, because the elites fail. When the elites fail, in comes guys like Hitler.
Okay.
And when Hitler comes, goodbye Dresden, and we're all burnt to death, particularly with nuclear war. So we can't afford this kind of extremism emerging. These people are not the solution to preventing this extremism from emerging. They're siloed off, they're cut off, and they don't want to talk to even people like you. They can't even talk to a panhandler. They can't even go on a regular bus, okay, because they're too worried somebody's going to shoot them, either in their head or whatever, or somebody's going to actually embarrass them. I have done every job in my life. I've planted trees in mosquito-infested places. I see one of your colleagues studying forestry. I've done everything. You know, I'm doing okay. But I've done every job in my life. I wonder how many people in the Bilderberg-Konferenz have done a regular job in their life, and how many don't have uninherited money. How many people really earned the money that they have? That's why they don't want to come up and talk to you, because they'll be revealed, not all of them, I don't want to say all of them, they will be revealed for the frauds that they are in not really understanding or relating to the people's issues and what the people need.
So if you say the elites are failing, what do you think
Generally,
people are supposed to do to stop this development that you say led to fascism?
Well, I think the people at the Bilderberg meeting, they're too much in control of too many of the levers. You know, they're the puppet masters. And as I said before, quoting Oscar Wilde, he said that for the vast number of men and women, I had women, he didn't say women, you have to remember women, come on. For the vast population, they live in a state of desperation. They're worried about their next paycheck. In America, I think they had a poll that showed most people, most of the middle class, can't even get on the short term more than an extra $400. Atlantic Monthly had a front page, the cover, with a middle class man, whoever he was, symbolized with a bag over his head and embarrassed about his economic situation. So the vast majority of people, because the economy is weaker, in a way they're weaker. But you know, there comes a point where if you have nothing to lose, you lose it. And more people have nothing to lose, and they're going to lose it. And if these people don't really understand this process that's going on, where so many people have very little to lose by expressing themselves politically, they're going to be in big trouble. I'm not calling for a revolution. I'm not saying there's going to be a revolution, but we are in the beginning time, I think, of some very desperate politics that could develop that I don't think is good for them over there, high up in their rooms or wherever they are meeting, or the people down here kept outside and walled away. You know, there is a wall there, you know. I don't think walls overall helped to bring a better society. We need dialogue like you guys are promoting, so that we can really use all of our talent, the talents of you guys, and they have talents too. I'm not sure which, but I'm sure they do, in technical talents, to help these people that they coldly call, precariats. Have you heard that word, precariat?
Yeah, sure.
What's this? We just used to call people poor or struggling, but now they don't want to say poor and struggling because it sounds like their agenda is defeated, that there's so many people who are doing poorly. They want to say precariats. They want to turn it into some kind of technical term, you know, like a robot, you know, a precariat. Oh, I'm a precariat, you know. I'm just a statistic of underprivileged and to be looked at coldly like how a screw is put into a car frame, you know. So we have to humanize the dialogue, and remember there are real people suffering, human beings, that if they knew person to person, they might even, you know, weep a bit. And maybe if they can weep a little bit instead of talking about people in these cold terms like precariats, then we could have a little bit, move the agenda, a better agenda, a common agenda of the people and the experts. There's no problem having experts, and a lot of those guys are experts, and no problem having those experts influence policy. Nobody should be saying these people should have no influence. A lot of these people have worked hard, some of them, and know a lot about many different things. But it's like a family. If it's only one person talking and deciding, that's not what we want. Okay, that's not the way a happy family works, except maybe 500 years ago in the kind of society that ISIS likes. So if they don't like ISIS being medieval in the way they decide, why should they also, in a certain way, act in a medieval way? You know, and here in this town, we have so much medieval symbolism to remind us of what the Middle Ages are, where very, very few people just stripped everybody else, with some exceptions, of everything. We don't need this continued new medieval type of society.
So you say the people should step forward and start communicating beside of the elites and their circles. So
well, I think
people in the streets and and say
absolutely,
what they
absolutely. And I think, you know, we don't all have to agree. There's things I don't agree with you about and vice versa. That's okay. That's called democracy. As long as we're polite about it, then there's no big problem. I'm not against chopping off their heads like the French Revolution. You know, there's some people who hate these people so much they want to chop their heads off. I'm sure there's some people, figuratively speaking. I'm not like that. But, you know, if you keep on provoking people, be it other countries or certain groups within your society, you can expect very anti-social kinds of behavior and kinds of extremist types of political behavior. And what do we have? We have the right. Is it true that the right wing in Germany is getting stronger by the day? The extreme right? Is that true?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, shouldn't that be a concern to them that maybe some of their actions, not just lazy people or screwed up people who don't understand their issues, are getting so pissed off and upset that, you know, I mean, they're human, and unfortunately people who are not informed, sometimes when they get frustrated, will be attracted to extremist ideology.
Sure. So you say the rise of fascism is the reason the rise of fascism is the failure of the elites in our society, failure of democracy.
Well, it'll be and the extreme left too, and sort of some unreasonable communism. Okay, but the rise of the extreme is partly due to these people being so disconnected with the voices of the average people and understanding the issues as the way they are seen by most people.
So we should raise our voice so it can be heard.
Well, yeah, and I think what they need is what I have proposed is a thing called the Hudson's Club. I don't even like this word club. You know, a club just means sort of an exclusive group. Yeah, but anyway, I use it so people can understand. So I propose the Hudson Club, which is post-Bilderberg, of concerned activists, unionists, CEOs, bankers, all those people who really want open dialogue, okay? And it can be done in private, I don't care. It can be done in public, I don't care. You know, getting together and having what I would call the antimatter of the Bilderberg Conference, okay? An intellectual antimatter. In other words, open, everybody participating, people who are bankers, who are presidents,
democracy.
Like the people I went to school with. I know these guys, you can't escape me. And, you know, and just activists and Greenpeace. Hell, we did that in British Columbia. You know, when our forest industry was killing all our forests and chopping down thousands of hectares of forests and clear cuts, finally, the industry leaders knew they had to talk to the environmentalists. Why can't these people do that? We even did it in Canada, and we're supposedly not so progressive. You know, we're North Americans and we're kind of like macho, right? But if we can do it in North America, as we saw with the environment about killing all the forests by the big companies and cutting it. And you know something? When the activists and the forest industry chiefs got together, they decided clear cut wasn't good, and they found new ways for the companies to make money and to protect the environment.
So you say there has to be a communication between the elite and the
absolutely.
people? Yeah.
And the thing is, you
and the
guys...
Bilderberger is assigned for no communication.
Yeah, you guys, right. You guys have a huge amount of knowledge and resources, whether you have specialists in the environment or on political organization or governments. You have huge amounts of knowledge and resources to share with these people. And they have a lot of information also from their inside perspective, maybe you don't know about, to share. In fact, they have a lot they don't want to share. And if I were in their shoes, I wouldn't want to share it either. But still, I think there's probably some people of good mind just over there in the hotel, meeting secretly, if there's anything such as secrecy nowadays with our multimedia.
You would prefer like the people open the doors and talk to everybody like down?
Yeah, okay. If they have to have their private meetings, you can have your private meetings if you want. They can have their private meetings, but afterwards it should be open Bilderberg, you can call it.
Yeah, open Bilderberg would be a better
I don't
idea.
even like the word Bilderberg now because it's so associated with all this secrecy and elitism. I don't like that. But so that's what I'm proposing. Is you guys don't want to go over to the hotel? I don't know. You're probably scared about contamination. I don't know. Just joking. But so I'm proposing this, what it's called a Hudson's Club. Okay.
Yeah. Open dialogue.
Bringing Bilderberg participants and non-Bilderberger participants, environmentalists, activists, CEOs, bankers, Hell, I can even deal with bankers because I have a terrible secret to tell you, okay? Because you know what?
Interesting.
Because as I'm telling them they should open their doors and not be so secretive, I'm an SOB. You know what an SOB is?
No, not really. Sorry.
Well, it's supposed to be son of a something very bad. It's a swear word. But no, it means for me, I'm a son of a banker. I'm a son of a banker. But it just shows you, my father was a banker, but he believed in helping things like Amnesty International or public radio. He believed in community and talking to people and giving time to his smallest customer, to his richest customer. He was part of an old idea of community, which is broken down. And these people are keeping that idea of my father and my grandfather of old community, the real good, positive old values, you know, that you guys actually represent. People may think, oh, you're just too young and modern and forward for reality. But the values I'm talking about are also the values of my grandparents, my father. Okay?
So do you think our society needs new values, or we need our old values back?
We need both. We need the best of our old values mixed with the best of our young generations and of our new modern world of technology. Like I'm holding this, I have a blog because of Apple Computer, okay? Yeah. Apple allows us to communicate more widely.
Well, a lot of people do, a lot of corporations allow.
Right, so we benefited from guys like Steve Jobs, even if the movie says he was such a horrible person. There are modern people who are opening information up and giving us the tools, both politically, mechanically, digitally, etc. So we need the best of those modern, forward-looking people, but also recognizing we've lost some old values that were dear to us, a sense of community, of people living with neighbors who might be doing poorly than them and helping them out. Even with if their house burned down, they would help and rebuild them. The farmers would do that. I'm not saying we go back to that process where we don't have any state involvement or insurance companies, but I'm saying
should step forward.
We have all the resources in our societies to be able to have a much better society, a much more peaceful society. We have all those resources. We have the resources to help those countries in need. Some of those countries will create political environments that make it very hard. So, I'm not a dreamer. I don't go around saying I represent hope, but I do think what we have now is far from what we should have. If you look at all the technology and universities you have in Germany, and all the resources you have here, Germany could become a fulcrum. Not simply, to bring in refugees and not know what to do with them, but it could be a major fulcrum worldwide, working with their banks and other big companies to improve humanity and reduce the prospects of World War III and fascism.
Which way would you suppose for Germany to go, do you think? Political. Do you think we should go with the US or we should go with Russia?
No, I think every country should be fairly independent. Yeah. I think we have to have certain alliances. We have to have a certain degree of trade to facilitate trade, but each country should have the dignity, be allowed the dignity to stand on their own feet and allow themselves to express their ways that represents their culture, sensitive to others and neighbors. But what we have now is too much of a one superpower top-down. And that's why we have so many problems with Russia. Russia certainly created some of its own mess by itself. But the reason we have so many problems with so many countries in the world is partly because we have these neocons. Obama's tried to stop them a bit, but he hasn't really done so, who are just basically trying to thrust their own idea of the economy, multinationals running the world, and keeping the arms race going. The military-industrial complex, which was the idea was first brought to light by a Republican conservative president, because those people back then had good community values. They didn't want to generate an arms industry that's self-perpetuating for profits and growing profits at the deaths of young people in Guatemala or wherever. Those people were decent people. They were my father. Yeah. And they're not around. And it really breaks my heart to see these kinds of people who are so mechanical in the way they deal with decent average people. My father was a loving person, he liked to help everybody, and he was a banker. So there's no reason that corporate people have to be this kind of cruel, secretive, and just think that they can defend easily getting $10 to $100 million. Look, we have a guy at WPP, a huge PR company, 70 million, he's getting $70 million. A third of the shareholders are upset. $70 million, what is he going to do with that? You know?
Yeah.
Promoting what? Junk products from China, you know, and us borrowing money to lend people, you know, who don't have jobs, borrowing money from China to lend money to people who don't have work, you know,
crazy.
from China,
Yeah.
so we can buy their junk products.
It's just for the wealthy of some few. It's not for the purpose of all.
And in the end, it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
As a forester, I always looked ahead. If you didn't look ahead, the tree you planted would die in a year or 2 years.
That's a good sentence. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you for that, Peter. Thank you for sharing ourselves.
Sorry for